All right. Here we are today. We've had a lot of demand for our sourdough starter, which we're giving away with our online ordering, and people want to know what to do with it when they get it. We get a lot of good reviews on our bread, and we have decided to share our recipe and teach folks how to make this at home. I think I first need to say that I am a one-trick pony. I'm not a baker. I know how to make this bread. I make pretty decent pies, but this is so many of you know more than, who are watching this video will know more than I do. And if you have criticism of my approach, save it, okay? You don't really need to hear it. I'm just telling you what I know. Now, this all started with my concern about how much time we were making bread in the restaurant using commercial yeast and the time that we needed to block out on a very specific schedule to knead the bread, to do all of that. And I wanted to work with a slow rise refrigerated dough. And I read Michael Pollan's book, Cooked, where he explores cooking in context of the four elements, and for air, he did bread, the history of bread making. And as part of that, he did the biography of Chad Robertson, who owns Tartine down in San Francisco, generally recognized as America's best bakery, often recognized as such. And so I bought Chad's book, Tartine, and got his country loaf recipe, and this is essentially what I'm going to be sharing with you today. There's links online that you can look at the Tartine recipe at a couple of different sources, and a way to get Chad's book, and a way to acquire many of the things that I'm showing you. I'm going to start off with what you need in order to do this. You need a mixing bowl. This is Grandma's mixing bowl. I'm 65. This mixing bowl is old. I remember this from my childhood. You need a scale, and we're going to be doing this in grams. I'm going to provide a link to the scale, and it's on Amazon. It's $9, and you'll get there in 5 days these days. Would have been the day after tomorrow previously. But you need a scale. You're going to need it. You can or might not, but I recommend getting these, what are they called, Banneton bowls? But proofing bowls. A pair of these, $10. I'll give you the link for that as well. It's nice to have a dough scraper, a bowl scraper for cleaning up your bowl, and a dough scraper to pick up your mess. So there's a dough scraper, is that what they call this? And again, I'm a one-trick pony, so what do I know? Having a little rice flour on hand is going to be is handy for when you're lining your proofing bowls. Bread making in a residential oven is a bit problematic because residential ovens are leaky. And what you need in order, this is a high moisture content bread, like 75% ratio of water by weight to the flour that we mix it with. And in our commercial ovens, where the doors seal and we're cooking off a bunch of it at a time, we can generate that steam just out of the loaves themselves, and it's the steam in the first phase of baking that gives you that crispy and well-sealed crust. In your commercial oven, you could be there trying to squirt water in when you're doing it and so forth, but the best way to get and we're going to be rolling back to these residential size batches, which is going to give you 2 1-kilo loaves. The best way to get the crust that you want is to get one of these 3-quart combo cookers. I'll provide a link for acquiring these as well. I think they're $50 a piece, something like that. And what you'll do is you'll get it at 500 degrees, and you put the pan in, get it heated up to 500 degrees, plop your loaf into there that you're going to be cooking off, put the lid on it for 10 minutes or so at the first phase of baking, take it off and finish, and turn the heat down and finish the baking for an hour or so. We're going to be getting to that later in this video. I want to start a little bit with talking about sourdough. Sourdough is not what we're shooting for here. Sour is when the the starter or the leavening that we're using has gone too far, gone over the edge, and has acidified. That's where that sour flavor comes from. We try to pick off at each stage of this bread making that I'll introduce you to. We try and pick off that leavening at the peak of its vitality, when it's the most fruity, when it's screaming for life, when it's bubbling like crazy. That gives us that fruity flavor, and prior to it becoming too acidic. We've been giving away starter. I want to get into this just a little bit. You can make your own starter. If you want something that you made yourself, that comes from you, all you do is take 100 grams of whole wheat flour, 100 grams of white flour, 200 grams of water, mix it up, put it in your pantry. Come back in 4 or 5 days. It's got kind of some green slime growing on it, and you mix 100 and 100 and 200, and you take a dollop of that slime and you put it in there. Just mix that up, put a dollop of that in there, and just from your environment, it's going to be picking up enough yeast and bacteria that after 10 days to 2 weeks, that's going to be doubling in size in about 8 hours. The difference between starter and leavening is only a matter of volume. Starter security in our restaurant is very important because we don't want to lose the starter. So we've always got a couple of batches of the starter in the cooler. People ask how long can I keep it? You can keep it in the refrigerator for a darn long time. If it's been there and you haven't used it for a long time, I would recommend refueling it by taking it by mixing up the equal parts of whole wheat and white flour and putting a dollop of that in there and charging it up there before you use it as the starter for your leavening. When you mix up the leavening, which you're going to use to make the breads, the leftover leavening is your starter for next time. You're always changing that over. But again, it's good to have a couple spots. If you don't, I would never here use all of my starter for any one piece. I would keep some of it back as I'm making that leavening so that I have it in case I fail. And we've done that before. We put the leavening where we wanted it warm, and we put it above the stove, and it got too warm, it got cooked and blew out and stuff, and we were scrambling to save our skins.